Have a story to tell? I believe you. Ghost, cryptids, the unknown. Let's talk about it. This is my GhostCast.
Welcome, viewers, to my GhostCast Halloween episode featuring Luc, martial artist, stuntman, and Irish folklore historian. Therese and Luc start the episode by talking about how they met. Let's just say drink was taken. Then the mood changes as Luc tells us about fairies and banshees. Have we been misled about their origins all this time? Enjoy.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to my GhostCast. I'm your host, Therese Gonzalez. Today, guys, I have an extremely special guest, a good longtime friend of mine that I've gotten in loads of trouble outside of the U.S. with. My buddy Luc, stuntman and student of Irish folklore. My buddy Luc. Welcome, Luc.
It's great to see you, man. It's great to see you. It's been a long time, but he's right. You've definitely got me in trouble in the past.
So, how did we meet, or where did we meet?
Well, if I can remember, because I'd imbibed so much drink at the time, I met Therese on a trip to Japan. Actually, we were training in martial arts, and Therese was gracious enough to ask me to go for a drinking contest with him that night, and
I lost. Well,
I think we all lost, to be honest with you, man.
everybody in the bar, the first bar lost, and we double lost. I don't know. I had some gains at the second one, but
oh man, yeah, you acquitted yourself amicably. I must admit, you were fantastic. A great sport.
it was a. So I had met Luc and the boys. It was Luc, Peter, and
Phil.
So we were there. These guys are badass. We're in Tokyo. We were in Tokyo. Were we in red light? No, we weren't in red light district. Were we? No, we were in.
We were in Osaka. That's where we went first.
That's
I think.
Right.
And then we got hammered.
That's the nicest way to. There was some shrimp chips somewhere in there, I believe. You know, that's what I got addicted to while I was out there. Fresh shrimp chips. So I met these guys. These guys are awesome. They were out there, they're kicking everybody's ass, representing Ireland well. We were trying to keep up. You know, Americans gotta hold our own at some point, you know. And we kept meeting up at, what was the name of the initial bar? What was it called?
That was the English bar. The hub, was it? And then was it the hub we met at? It's called the English pub. That was
the pub. Yeah, the pub.
Yeah, the pub. I think that's where we started off there.
Oh boy, did we start. I wound up meeting another Irish fellow while I was in the urinal. Yeah. Anyways, it came to be a battle of the. Hey, what tribe? What is it? The tribes? What are the?
Which one of our tribes? It was this Dublin versus. We were drinking with a load of Cork guys, and we were having a bit of a drinking contest with them. The Dubs won, of course, but
of course.
But then it became an international drinking contest.
It did. You know, it did. We had all kinds of weird representatives on our end that we brought forth. But no, we had a blast. I kept seeing Luc and the boys over and over at different classes in Japan. You know, I'm like, man, I guess it's meant for me to hang out with these guys. Next thing you know, I'm on a sightseeing tour. Right before we saw you guys again, I had just finished riding for the first time. What are those little wheelie things where the little skinny Asian guys run you around?
The rickshaws.
Rickshaw, dude. I was so heavy. That dude was by himself. Oh.
Full of beer from the night before.
Dude, it was. And we had just again dropped off, and that's when I saw you guys again. I think we were ordering some food or something. And it was awesome. So, anyways, Luke, tell us a little bit about a little bit of your background. You got stuntman, you got student of Irish Folklore.
Yeah. So I'm from Dublin in Ireland, and so I grew up listening to all these kind of fairy stories, ghost stories, these kind of things. And there's a possibility in Ireland to do a degree and even going to doctorate level in Irish folklore. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So for me, doing a degree in on Irish ghosts and fairies and monsters sounded much more appealing than doing a degree in computers. But the only problem is you don't get money from Irish ghosts and things like that.
That's a shame. That's a shame. We need to change that.
So I kind of was thinking, how can I monetize my martial arts experience? And we don't have huge clubs in Ireland like you guys do in the US, where you can actually make a living as a martial artist. So stuntman was the best way for me to go. So I got work on a couple of different projects. I did a PlayStation ad. I worked on the TV series Vikings. Still do. I'm working on the new series Valhalla, and I'm working on a Ridley Scott film now called The Last Duel, which is set in medieval Europe. So that's great fun. So that's my history. And then, so I did my primary degree in Irish folklore. Did a lot of supernatural folklore modules within it. So and then I've done my own research in and outside. So yeah, I worked as a tour guide for a good few years in Dublin city centre. In Patrick's Cathedral, Christchurch Cathedral, and I have a fair bit of experience.
When I come in town, I got a personal tour.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, no, absolutely.
When I come in town, dude, you're gonna be my guest host. We'll be hosting together. We'll be talking to somebody on the other line.
I'll bring you to the haunted places around Dublin.
Oh, that would be amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. No,
so I'm sure the fans of Vikings, because I'm a huge fan of the Vikings show, is probably the number one question you get asked. Is Lagatha as hot as she looks on TV?
Yeah, her name is Catherine. But yeah.
Catherine? Oh my God, she's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. She moves quite well. She's a very good martial artist as well.
Really?
Yeah. She's pretty good.
I just watched her in that series, Woo Fighters or Woo something. It was like a Netflix show.
So I don't want to spoil any Vikings for you, but she's gone out of the show now. But she did direct a few episodes of the later series, Vikings. So I don't think we're going to see her again in the new series, because the new series is set 100 years after the previous series. So,
yeah, I saw when she died, dude. That broke my heart.
Yeah.
Can I have the body? She went out cold, man. She went out cold. How much of that show is based on some realistic history here? Is it a bit?
I mean, they're very liberal with their timelines and even their gear, but they try to make it. I mean, they're making a show to be entertaining, and you even tell from the fight scenes they're doing their best to make it look real. But there's obviously certain elements of fighting for the camera is not like fighting in real life. So, but it is. Let's just say they take pieces of history and they embroider them to kind of for a modern audience. I would say.
That makes sense. Yeah, guys, be on the lookout. Do every episode, and I mean every episode. I'm looking more in the background. I am the foreground. I'm like, I know Luke's in here somewhere.
Yeah,
maybe that's him, and it's always like, it's a quick stab and death, and I'm like, did Luke get his ass? Was that Luke?
We do our best to hide our faces when we're getting killed, so we get used again to die again. So
I'm just like, man. So did you? I don't know. If I was you, I would have probably recorded every piece that was kind of me and making a compilation of, oh, dude, I know that was me.
I can never tell because it all runs into one. I can't even remember the days I was on anymore. It just runs into one. So I couldn't even tell who's who, But there are some scenes where I can go, yeah, that's definitely me falling off that thing or whatever. you know.
Yeah. So what's it like being a stuntman?
It's good fun. It's good fun. I mean, everybody specializes in their own thing, you know. But for me, it's the weapon stuff. But yeah, I love it. It's a great job. It's great fun. It's tiring. It's long days. You know, you're looking at 14, 15-hour day, easy. You know, and might go in. It's usually in blocks, so you might do a battle scene over 3-4 days, and it wears on you. But it's good fun. Like I said, it's good fun.
The weather's good though, right?
Not in Ireland. Famously not in Ireland. But yeah, I mean, like at the moment it's been nice, but it's starting to turn cold now. So this is going to be a miserable winter, I think.
I'm with you. Well, guys, this is Threz with my GhostCast. This is my buddy Luc, and we'll be right back. Stick around.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I've been on fire with Sally Field, gone fast with a girl named Bo, but somehow they just don't end up as mine. It's a death-defying life I lead. I take my chances. I die for living in the movies and TV. But the hardest thing I ever do is watch my leading ladies kiss some other guy while I'm bandaging my knee. I might fall from a tall building, I might roll a brand new car, 'cause I'm the unknown stuntman that made Redford such a star.
Hey guys, welcome back to my GhostCast. I'm your host, Threz Gonzalez, aka the Badass. Today we have badass dude, and he's up to par, man. Luc is back with us, so he's here to inform us and to scare the crap out of you guys in a good way. So, Luc, take it.
Well, thanks, Therese. So, I suppose when talking about kind of a supernatural history in Ireland, it's kind of hard to avoid the subject of fairies in Ireland. So when I'm talking about fairy, I don't mean a little, a winged being that's about the height of your hand.
Not cute little girls that are just...
No, they're definitely not cute. So the Irish fairies are, that's probably a funny translation that people give to them. In Irish, they're called the She, and so they're kind of like a memory of the kind of old gods that were pre-Christian deities that were in Ireland. And so when Christianity, in the 4th century, when Christianity arrived here in the 5th century, the belief was so ingrained in people's psyche that they couldn't take it away, essentially. And so even when the full Christianization of Ireland happened, there were certain elements of pre-Christian religion that they couldn't get rid of, that they couldn't wipe out. And one of them was this belief in this other world of these different beings. And so you've got fairies, which are the Dina Shi, the people of the mounds. So you've got these fairy forts all over Ireland. They're like pre-Christian burial grounds, sometimes actual fortresses or homesteads, and they're what's left of them. And so in folk tradition, these are the places where these beings live. And between these places are paths that they move from. And people, if they build their houses across these paths, unbeknownst to them, the house can become what's called fairy struck or fairy haunted. And so poltergeist activity that happens in America or all around the world, in Ireland would be associated with the fairies. They wouldn't think it's a ghost that's in the house or a person that has their energy all askew like a child and the place is getting all fucked up, they would say that place is in the fairies, and they would say that's probably the fairy path or something like that is going through the house, and so it's the fairies letting them know that they're in the wrong place. And so that's one element of it. So the fairies are like a memory of the old gods on earth, or maybe nature spirits or something to that effect. So this belief, up until kind of the modern era, was fairly prevalent among the people in Ireland, and even today, in the outside of the cities, you'll still find people who will have traditions of this in their family. They'll know about it, and very often they'll still believe in it, but they won't talk about it very often. And so this is the thing, many folklorists go around the country collecting stories, first-hand accounts and older accounts of fairy encounters. And so very often it's go
Just
ahead.
real quick, is there any reason that they don't talk about it? Is that
there's a stigma to it. Irish people are kind of cynical, I suppose, and so very often, somebody will laugh at you for saying that you believe in something, like a ghost, or, oh, did you see that ghost? Yeah, well done. But if you get them on their own, they might laugh at you, but if you get talking to them, maybe after a while they'll start to tell you their own experiences. So, you
gotta hang out at the bars or the pubs for that.
yeah, there's certain elements of that. There's another tradition, say, for example, like fairy trees. So there's trees that are associated with fairies too, and so very often they're traditional. They're called shgachs, and for example, like, people would divert roads. There was a motorway diverted here in the early 2000s because it was a known fairy tree, and people wouldn't cut it down. The workman didn't want to cut it down. You can find evidence of that. You can just Google it. You'll find the case there. And so there's, in Iceland, it's much more prevalent. They have their own fairy traditions where they respect the local areas where the fairies live, and they'll divert roads around towns away from them. But in Ireland they don't do that, but there is evidence that they do in some places. So so when it comes to the fairies, people always ask me, like, oh, what do they look like, or how would you identify a fairy? Like, what do they look like? So
that was something I definitely was going to ask. I was like, so what do I need to look out for when I'm out there?
They're basically shapeshifters. So an Irish fairy can look like us usually, but there'll be a little difference. They might be paler because their blood isn't red. Traditionally, as through the lore, their blood is supposed to be white. That they come from this other place, this liminal place, this timeless world, and they manifest themselves in this world. But they need a human to manifest in this world. So they need to draw the energy of a human to manifest in this world. So I'm going to run off on tangents, so stop me if you...
Yeah, no problem.
So basically they can shapeshift themselves into anything, really. But if they're shapeshifting themselves into a person, very often there will be something about them that would be a little bit off. They might be super pale. They might be quite small or quite big. But other than that, you could be sitting beside them on the bus and you wouldn't know. And so, for example, people would say, well, how come we don't experience fairies anymore or anything like that? One would say, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is people are looking at their phones for half their life now. Also,
aren't they? Dude, yeah.
Yeah, well, people's attention isn't confined to their locality anymore. It's they're either in their phone or they can travel 50 miles in an afternoon in their car, and there's no problem. Whereas before, people lived within, say, a 5-kilometer distance. They knew all their neighbors, they knew the land intimately, and so they would walk up for a lot of things. Yeah, exactly, and be out all times of the day and night. So when you're sitting in your own company and there's no sound, there's no hum of a monitor or anything like that, and you're sitting with your own thoughts, it's kind of in those times that people experience the supernatural. And that doesn't mean the supernatural isn't there. It just means we can't feel it anymore, or we don't know it. So that would be my explanation to it.
That makes a lot of sense. I have the same idea that's what takes place, because I have conversations with my mom about the old folklore around my culture, my people, and man, those stories are so jacked. And I'm like, well, my sister's like, well, we don't believe it. Other people I know are like, we don't believe it anymore. I'm like, that stuff's still there. The difference is you're looking at your phone, you're watching TV, listening to radio, and your stuff is just honed in on everything but your surrounding.
Exactly.
So I'm with you 200% on that one.
Yeah, it's all still there. I mean, so that we haven't changed, but there's certain accident hotspots in the world, on the roads and stuff like that, and that could be, very often in certain localities that would be associated with a bad luck part of the road, that maybe they cut down a fairy tree or they dug up a fairy fort there, and that's going to have bad luck. You'll see a rake of deaths on a very specific part of the road that would be explained in that way. It depending on where you are now in the country. You find less and less in the big cities like Dublin, although you will still find traditions in Dublin, like the Banshee tradition will still exist in parts of Dublin and things like that. Yeah. So
Cool.
So fairies. So like I said, fairies are shapeshifters, so they can pretty much look like whatever the hell they want. But generally, but they do have a society. They usually have a king or a leader, and they enjoy the same kind of things that we like: dancing, music, that kind of stuff.
So here's a question my audience may have for you: are you a fairy?
No, although despite my pointy ears, no, I'm not a fairy.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. So next week you bringing on banshees, huh?
Yeah, banshees. Yeah. So the banshee is, again, I think in America there's a perception that she's a ghost that wails when someone's going to die in a family. It's not 100% wrong, but it's not completely right. So a banshee just means fairy woman. So the banshee was never a human. She didn't die. She was always what she is. And so,
interesting.
Yeah, and different parts of the country, the banshee goes by different names. So in the south of the country, the banshee is called a bow, or a bav, B-A-B-H, which is another word for a crow too. So, so the tradition of the banshee is a memory of an older goddess that exists, if you want to say, in Ireland. And so the Bav Ka, the battle crow, she mourned the death of warriors at the end, but she also incited men to battle too. And so in Ireland, there's these older gods, these pre-Christian gods, and so she would be a manifestation of one of those pre-Christian gods. So you might have heard, maybe some of your friends that are Wiccans or Druids would have heard of a goddess called Murugan. So
I think I heard of that.
Yeah, they might call her Morrigan. Some people call her Murugan is how it's pronounced. So Murugan just means great queen. Mor is great, Rihanna is queen, so great queen. So the tradition back then was you would never name a goddess by their real name. You would name them by a description of what they are. So the goddess's name is not Murugan. That's what you would call, because when you call something, you might invite her or its eye on you. You don't want to do that, especially not with a battle or a war goddess, but maybe. So anyway, she is an element of that. So she had three aspects to her, and one was the aspect that mourned the dead. And so the banshee is a memory of that aspect of the goddess that mourned the dead. So people from Gaelic old Irish families sometimes have a banshee attached to it. And so if you die, or if someone in your family dies and people hear the banshee, that banshee is wailing for someone who's attached to this old ancient family. That's the idea. So
that's badass. I think I have an aunt like that she's always bitching about something when one of us does something wrong. No, but dude, that would be really neat to have an attachment like that to their family. Like that's really neat, actually.
So people would often, well, they used to certainly, but people still claim to hear the banshee. Usually the person who's going to die doesn't hear the banshee, it's somebody else. So the person, that's a blessing, I suppose.
I was like, I think I hear it. Oh, that's like the go down test, man. You're like, dude,
I can't fucking hear it. I'm gonna die. Yeah,
you're trying not to get hit, and you're just thing, like. I can hear it. I promise. Sure you can. Bam. You know.
So there you go. So that's a banshee. She's a fairy, and she cries for the dead of people who are attached to ancient families, specific ancient bloodlines. That's it. So that's a banshee. And and then you've got it. Of your fairies, she's what we would consider a solitary fairy. So you've got trooping fairies and solitary fairies. So trooping fairies move in a group, a unit. Usually they see a load of riders, or they'll be in an army known as a slua, or a host of fairies, the slua. And then the other one's these solitary fairies who you would have. A solitary fairy would be like the banshee, what you would probably know as a leprechaun, a luridon, or that they have lots of different names. Luc Breathnach is the traditional name for a leprechaun, and it just means little crouching man. And they're a different thing altogether. And so I mean the traditional leprechauns as well in Ireland is not they're not really as well known as they probably are elsewhere in the world. We know what a leprechaun is. We've seen them, but the actual lore traditions from say 100 years ago and before, he was quite rare. You wouldn't really have heard about him too much.
Really?
You would have heard about the banshee more. Yeah, definitely.
So it's a little more recent. Is that what that is?
No, it was definitely an old tradition. It was just, I suppose, it really came to life when Irish immigrants went to America and they used them as a mascot on different things for, say,
that makes sense.
Notre Dame or whatever, and you see this, and people are like, "Oh, it's a leprechaun." There's fucking leprechauns everywhere, but they're not. They're not really well known.
That's cool. All right, guys. So here's the first segment of my GhostCast. Man, I'm enjoying this. This is awesome. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, love it. Keep going. Keep going.
All right, guys. There's so much more to come. Just stay in touch. Here we go. We'll be right back. Welcome back to my GhostCast. Today's guest, Luc. Luc, I think he's going to tell us today a little bit about his experiences. This is going to be awesome. Thanks, Luc.
No problem. Well, like I was saying just before the break there, I was talking a little bit about the banshee. Well, I'll give you a story of mine that I have, that my own personal experience. Whether it was a banshee or not, I don't know, but I'll leave it up to your call. Maybe it's a bit crass of me to ask you. So essentially, what happened to me, that the closest thing that I know of a banshee that I came across was, I used to live in a place called Tala. Tala is a suburb on the southwest of Dublin, at the bottom of the Dublin Mountains. Now, the Dublin Mountains are more like hills, they're not big mountains, but anyway. So it was, I was about 14 at the time. And this would have been summer. So it was a warm night, very, very heavy. It's very quiet, and there was no wind, so it was still. And I was in my room, and my room was in the top of the house, inside the attic, basically. It was in the roof. So I had the windows open. So I'd often get out onto the roof and sit on the roof, and just chill out and watch. But
that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool.
So I was doing my homework one night. It's probably about 10 o'clock in the evening. It had just gotten dark, because in the summer in Ireland, it just gets dark around, say, 10 o'clock in the height of the summer. And so this was about May or June, I think. I think it was May, because then that's when the school year is on. So May.
How old were you?
I was about 14. So
14.
I was in secondary school at the time, which is probably your high school. I'm not really too sure. 14 years old, anyway. So I was sitting up doing my homework, and all of a sudden, so it's dark, and there's kids playing outside, and there's dogs barking. It's just the noise that you would hear. And next thing, there's this what I can only describe as a scream, but it didn't sound. I thought it was a car alarm going off, but it didn't. Not the way a car alarm goes, wee, wee. But it went wee and didn't stop. It just kept going up. Wee. But it sounded like it was definitely like a human mixed in with it. I couldn't explain it. It was insane. But what it did was it just locked me. I was fucking terrified. I was just stuck. And it went on for probably about 5 seconds. 5 long seconds, man. It's like 5, 4, 3, 2, went on and then stopped. And there was no sound. The dog stopped barking. Everything was dead silent. There's no kids moving out on the road. Nothing. It was dead silent. And then it happened again. Except it was louder.
Oh, man.
And it was confusing because I wasn't scared. It was just, something inside me just stuck me to the fucking bed that I was sitting on. I was just, fuck, what the fuck is that thing? Like, I didn't know what it was. It was like it sounded like an air raid siren. That's the only way I could say it, except it didn't go up and down and up and down. It just went up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And then it trailed off, but quickly. It's the second one. And then there was a third one. But the third one sounded far away. It didn't sound close to the other one sounded like it was outside my window or outside on the road. But the second one sounded a good bit away. And then it went. This is the third one. So I was terrified, scared shitless. And so I sat in my room probably for a good 5 minutes, contemplating where to stick my head out the window or not. So I did. And there was nothing. Everything was dead still. There was no sound. The dogs weren't barking. There was no noise at all. And this is a suburb. There's a lot of people around. So I didn't say anything else. Kind of didn't know what the fuck it was. Thought it was just a bit strange. And closed my window. I wasn't thinking banshee or anything like it. I thought it was just a really fucking weird noise. Said it to my parents downstairs. They didn't hear it. They didn't hear it at all. And so the next morning, though, what I thought was interesting and what kind of made me think that it probably might have been a banshee was there was a man on the road. He died, and there was an ambulance outside his house, and he was being taken into the ambulance. He's dead, obviously. He died the night before. So my thought is that was possibly a banshee crying for that man. But the thing about the banshee, the lore is that the people who hear the banshee can be people in the locality. It doesn't have to be the family. So a lot of people heard that night, and then some people I talked to didn't hear it at all. But that was really unsettling because the sound, I've never heard anything like it. Never heard it again. And years later, when I started studying Irish folklore and studying banshee, all the elements added up: the tree screams, the pitch, everything. It wasn't normal. It didn't sound like anything an animal would make. So foxes' screams, their mating call, can sound like a woman screaming. And so very often foxes' screams are associated with the banshee. People say, "Oh, that's a fox you heard, not the banshee." And this wasn't a fox. This is extremely loud. This sounded like it was in my room. It was reverberating around the place. And then when it went, it was very, very oppressive and heavy. The atmosphere in the air, kind of like, when a bulb goes out, a bulb blows, and this kind of static feeling in the air.
Yeah,
kind of weird smell. That's kind of what it was like. It was very, very strange. Never experienced something like it. Actually, while we're on the banshee, my grandfather told me he's seen the banshee. I didn't see her. I may have only heard her, but he's seen her.
What?
And it was the death of my uncle, or his uncle, so my great uncle. Mm-hmm. He used to have to cycle from a place called Crumlin, which is in Dublin City, nearest Dublin City, into the countryside, a place called Blessington. Back this would have been in the 50s. So he was cycling to and from. It's a long distance. It's probably about 20k, maybe a bit more. And he was cycling his bike, and he's seeing a little girl on the road. And this was around twilight, so it wouldn't be normal to see someone out at this time. He was cycling back from work. Sorry, apologies. He was cycling from the countryside back into Dublin. So he was coming along the road, and he's seen what he thought was a little girl sitting on the fence, but her hair was down and she was crying. But she wasn't crying like wailing. She was just sobbing. So he went over to her. He got off his bike and went over to her. And when he got close to her, he realized she had the face of an old woman.
What?
Get out of him. He said he was terrified. So he jumped on his bike and started cycling, tearing it down the fucking road. And he looked back and she wasn't sitting on the wall anymore. So he was fucking pedaling for dear life. He was like, this is fucking weird. But he said he felt something on him and he looked down and there was two hands holding him. And she was sitting on the back of the fucking bike holding him. He flipped out and ran home in the dark, right?
Oh, shit.
Got a lift back. He told me he got a lift back the next morning up the road. And there was this bike sitting on the side of the road all mangled. Now, it's probably a car went over it or something like that in the middle of the night, you know, but he said the Banshee fucked up his bike. So, yeah, she twisted his bike on him. But yeah, that's he said that's where he's seen a Banshee. And he was pretty convincing. Like he wasn't just telling me a yarn. He believed it. Well, came across like he believed it anyway. Maybe he was just telling me a story, but he told me he was 100% he'd seen it. You know?
Man, dude, you know what's so interesting is that your first story about the hearing the Banshee and now your grandfather, I think we're connected because the same age. I think I was about 14. We had just moved into a new neighborhood, brand new neighborhood, and this is in Corpus, so this is kind of a smaller city here in Texas along the Gulf of Mexico, and we moved to a suburb, you know, and it was kind of out, little, you know, pretty far out the main city. There's a bunch of lands out. Anyways, there was a big hangar that was out there. That was a well-known devil worshipping hangar where guys would go and do rituals and stuff. Later on, I have a story on that where I actually got in there, me and my friends and my cousin, and we saw all kinds of stuff and sacrifice weird brown stuff on the ground, huge pentagrams, candles. Oh yeah, we saw the whole thing, bones. And so the area they had called it kind of like Goatman's Trail, in a bit of all this lore came with it. And I was like, whatever. We freshly moved in, and we still had a lot of unpacking to do. Dude, I was about 14, man. I was like, I think it was might have been my freshman year.
It's terrifying.
High school. And so dude, I was like, my parents are like, hey, we're gonna go eat. Right, we're gonna go grab something. You want something? I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna stay. You know, but I wind up staying by myself and sleeping on my stomach. I'm gonna make this the short version because I don't want to make it about me. But I just thought it was like, as soon as you said it, dude, I was like, and I'm like, oh my god, I was like, it triggered a memory, and so I was like, I wind up laying on my stomach with the window open. And you know, the cool thing about Corpus, it has a nice breeze to it all the time. There's always a breeze. And I was laying on my stomach, and at a far distance, my eyes are closed, my face is head down, my head is away from the pillow. I'm sleeping like this. The window's on this side. And I hear a screech that I've never heard before. And this is it's almost dark. It's getting dark. Not dark yet, but I'm by myself. And I hear a screech. It's like a like real high-pitched, weird-ass sound. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a messed up bird. I made a joke in my head, you know? Because technically inside I'm a comedian, you know? And, and so I hear that messed up sound, and I'm like, oh, that's messed up. And then I hear it again, but it sounds closer. And I'm like, oh, dude, that sounds closer. And then there was a long pause. And I'm like, I start falling back asleep. And then I hear in the window.
Fuck that shit now.
And it was loud. And I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's
and I got what they call, I don't believe it, but they call it, what's that called? Sleep paralysis.
Like a hag attack, just sitting on your chest or something like that, was it?
But I wasn't asleep, you know. I was awake because that shit woke me up.
Oh no, you're definitely. I've had the sleep paralysis where you see the old woman in the room and all that. Yeah, man.
And I couldn't move,
shit,
right?
Man.
I couldn't move. So my I was like, and I'm like, okay. And I just hear it, and I could hear flopping in the window.
Fuck that, man.
And I'm like, oh my God. We have a skinny little screen, and it's wide open. And I'm like, all right, I gotta pretend I'm asleep. And so I'm like, so I'm snoring. I'm trying not to, and I'm starting to scramble up, but I can't turn over, dude. I'm like, and I'm partially laughing because I'm like, dude, you really suck at this. You're gonna die. Anyway, it winds up screaming one last time. It took off, and I heard it at mid distance, and then I heard it at a far distance. So
That's scary, man.
that was like, holy shit, dude. Who knows, man? We were new to the neighborhood. It never happened again.
You never know. There's some funny stuff out there, man. Some funny stuff. Particularly, I suppose, when you're younger, maybe you're more susceptible to feeling and seeing that stuff. I think, or maybe I don't know. Certainly,
Maybe.
That's my experience with it anyway. Well, I've had some funny experiences when I'm older as well, but when I'm younger, I did as well. Like that sleep paralysis thing, that happened to me a lot now. That's never fun. It's quite scary.
It's not.
That horrible feeling when you're awake and you're like, you take forever to turn onto your side. I'm gonna fucking die.
It's like, how the hell do I? Yeah, dude, I don't know. If you're trying to explain something that I think is beyond, it's like I'm awake. How do you call it sleep paralysis if my ass is awake?
Yeah. I did a little. I looked into it before. I think what they say is that your body releases a chemical during sleep, so you don't like run into a wall when you're dreaming and stuff like that. And just
I release a lot of chemicals when I sleep.
Don't we all? But I think what I heard of what it was is when your mind becomes conscious, but your body hasn't released the chemical to unlock your muscles, let's say. The problem is you're kind of still semi in this unconscious conscious state, so maybe you're able to experience things that you normally is beyond your perception. I was always scared the shit out of me because when I was in sleep paralysis, most of the time nothing would happen, and sometimes you'd see shapes moving around the room.
Yeah. Yes.
They're looking at you or standing on you or standing beside you, and like, fuck that. Like, you're dreaming when you're awake and you're seeing all this mad shit. Oh, fuck that noise, man.
Dude, you get me. I do. Dude, I got some stories that I will tell you probably off camera because they'll be too
yeah, that's fair.
So Luke, sorry man, we took us a little off track there. I'll probably delete that section and put it as a special cutout.
No problem, man. It's no problem at all. You do what you gotta do.
Yeah. All right, that was good. We're going to our next segment, guys. This is Luke, our stuntman and student of Irish folklore, here at My GhostCast.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I've been on fire with Sally Field, gone fast with a girl named Bo, but somehow they just don't end up as mine. It's a death-defying life I lead. I take my chances. I die for living in the movies and TV. But the hardest thing I ever do is watch my leading ladies kiss some other guy while I'm bandaging my knee. I might fall from a tall building, I might roll a brand new car, 'cause I'm the unknown stuntman that made Redford such a star.
Hey guys, welcome back to My GhostCast. We got our special guest, Luke, and I got the cat meowing in the background. So let's hope this doesn't catch it. Welcome back, Luke. Luke's got some really cool stuff that we were talking off screen.
Yeah. So we were just talking about fairy lore, and he was asking, Therese asked, had anybody ever said that there was banshees in America? And I just know from studying in college that there were accounts of people had said that when a lot of Irish went over to America in the 1840s during the famine, some of the people had written back saying that there was fairies over there, and there were as many or more. There's a lot of accounts of people seeing and hearing the banshee in America when people back in Ireland died, and vice versa. And the same with not just hearing, but sightings as well. But my guess is that phenomena exists in probably a lot of cultures. It's not just Irish. We just have a specific name for it. But I'm sure, I've no doubt that it exists in other cultures too. So if anybody's sitting at home screaming at the TV going, we have that as well, then I'm sure you absolutely do.
Yeah, dude, we got something similar in my culture. We call it the lechuza. It's supposed to be like a witch. I mean, there's different accounts of what it is, but the one I've heard the most from that's been passed down to me is it's a witch that's half bird, half witch that changes form. It's like kind of like what you said, changes form and comes around, and if she's at night and you hear her at night, if you hear her, you need to get your ass moving because you're in her sights. Yeah.
It's that stuff all over the world, man. It's so fucking interesting. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no smoke without fire. I certainly experienced something that I couldn't explain, yeah, you did too. And they're quite similar stories there. I mean, yeah, it exists all over the world. I've no doubt that a lot of people do. I'm trying to think. I do have several stories stuff that's kind of happened to me. But I'm sure you've been in this situation, and maybe people who are listening have experienced something similar. When you experience something like this, something weird or out of the ordinary, very often at the time your mind doesn't register it the same way. Like, for example, you're lying in bed there and you're listening to this thing fucking flapping and screaming, and you're just fucking lying there. If you tell somebody that story, they're like, why the hell didn't you get up and run out of the room? Or something to that effect. And I know you're saying you had sleep paralysis, but even me, like, I'm sure you've experienced other strange things.
Yeah.
Very often, like, they don't register with you until they're done and gone. And you're like, hang on a sec, that was weird. And so, I mean, for me, certainly anything that's ever happened to me was kind of normal at the time. It was just kind of curious, but I didn't really register it. Maybe it was a brain's way of coping with what's going on. Well, for example, I was on one of the islands off the coast of Ireland, off the west coast of Ireland. It's called Inisheer. It's a small island. It's tiny. You'd walk around it in about maybe 2 hours. It's really small. But there's a castle on top of it. It's called O'Brien's Castle. And I was staying there one year. I think it was in October. So there's nobody on the island in October except the locals. So there's fuck all to do in it except drink. And the pub was only open for like 2 hours or 3 hours a day. It was hell. So I couldn't get off it because there's only like 2 boats a day, and it was really rough weather, so I was stuck there. Oh, it's pretty horrendous. Now, it's a lovely island, don't get me wrong, but in the summer, go during the summer. But I was there in October. It was late October as well. And I decided to get up one morning and go for a walk. And I walked up to the castle. It's the highest point in the island. It's this 15th century castle. It's built about 600 years ago. And I went into the castle, and it's a ruin. There's no roof on it. It's just basically 4 walls and a little small dark kind of a room to the side. But I went in the main door into it. It's just a hollow. It's a door, and it has a door. And I walked in, and I was looking around it, getting a bit creepy. It's fucking scary. Like, cause like you're on your own. It's like, something happens to me over here, I'm dead. There's nobody around. And I was in this place. I was walking around, and the wind was quite strong, but inside the castle it was dead silent. This is I suppose it's a running theme. It was dead fucking silent. You could hear the wind howling around the castle. I mean, there's but there was no wind coming into this little courtyard bit. It was very
Oh, dude, I already start looking. I get goosebumps. I'm like,
oh yeah. So I was sitting there. I was just kind of enjoying it, like, 'cause it felt kind of heavy. I heard a kind of a, like, you know, like the crack of stones, as if someone is just standing there, like, you know, on the bottom of the floor in some of the rooms is like stone. So it sounded like someone shifted their weight, and there was a crack of someone moving stones, basically, off someone's foot. So it sounded like there was somebody in around the corner, standing there, like, and so I looked around, there was nobody there, and I just put my back against the wall, and I'll never forget this, scared the fucking shit out of me. But it got really, really quiet, and I could hear my heartbeat. That's how quiet it was. You know, you can hear.
oh man, that's not a good sign.
And I got this horrible feeling, a really horrible feeling. Like, it got really cold, and I heard a girl, what sounded like a girl, hyperventilating beside my ear, like someone trying to get air, like that. Scared the shit out of me, right? It sounded like someone who was terrified themselves, hyperventilating into my ear, but just their breath.
Oh.
So it sounded like somebody who was hiding or was about to get killed or something like that. It sounded like, that's what it sounded like. It was a girl hyperventilating, terrified. That's what it sounded like, but it was right in my ear. I fucking bolted. I looked around, there's nobody around the place, but it was like, and the thing about it was, is where I was standing, it was in this big open room, open to the sky, like.
Yeah.
But I could hear this thing right in my ear, and I sat there and I listened to it, because I was like, this is fucking weird. Is this me? I thought it was me, because I could hear my own heartbeat, but it wasn't. This was something else. This was scared. This is very strange. And I ran outside, and I was with a girl at the time. She was, you know, probably be 100 yards away. I thought it was maybe her taking the piss out of me or something. She was hiding somewhere or something. She was cooking.
This is a good way to turn him on. Hello, get my ass out of here.
There's a ghost in there. I'm not going back in there. I wouldn't go back in. It's terrible. It's terrifying. So that was my what I can consider probably a ghost. I don't know. In a ghost in Irish is called a taibhse. Taibhse is the Irish word for ghost, the Gaelic word for ghost. And that was probably a taibhse. That was probably what that was. So it was probably a memory being replayed. That's the way it felt to me, because I don't think that person or whatever what was going on was aware that I was there. It sounded like somebody was hiding and was hyperventilating, or it just sounded like a woman in fear hyperventilating and trying their best not to make noise. It was eerie as fuck. And that was one experience that I had that did genuinely freak me out at the time it happened. The other ones are just kind of confused, going, "What's that? What that happened?" But that one, I was scared the hell out of me.
Dude, holy crap, man! Like I said, there, you and I have similar experiences. I'm like, oh damn, dude, Luke lived my life in the other side of the world.
We're all living lives. We're all living each other's lives somewhere.
Oh, dude. You know, the old saying is that, oh, no coincidences. You know,
I was kind of played it back in my mind. It's like, what if that was a replay of something that something happened to somebody? I always wonder, God, what was the person expecting, or what was going to happen? Maybe the castle was under siege or some shit like that back in the day, or
oh yeah,
who knows? But whatever it wasn't a nice experience.
Oh man, yeah, dude. You know, that's you got a really good point. What if that was, you know, that residual energy from the castle being sieged or what have you?
Just a pure fear of that person was going through, and just replayed. It was just stuck in that place. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever it was.
Yeah, sometimes kids sound like girls. You know,
could have been. Yeah. It wasn't nice. It wasn't nice.
Yeah. Holy crap. Yeah, triggering memories, dude. You're triggering memories. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that time. What else you got for us, man? You got any?
Yeah, I mean, I've loads of funny things that have happened. me and people I know over time as well. I remember have to be careful about naming names.
Yeah. If I had to mute them, I will. I'm going to send you a copy of this.
Well, I'll give you one story. It's not a story, it happened to me, but there was 3 other people involved, and each of those 3 people have different versions of the story. So I'll tell you what my side of the story is.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Let's do that.
You can take it from there. So I was on another one of those islands, these Iron Islands. This is Inishmore. It's a big island. There's a lot of tourists go to it every year. It's quite well known. It's off the coast of Galway, Clare Galway area. And I was there one year for a music festival. I play music. Not very well, but I play traditional Irish music, and I tend to get free drink for it. So,
you also need to send us a copy so we can play it in the background.
Nobody wants to hear that, dude. But I was there one year, and I was camping with a couple of friends of mine for the weekend, and I had a pretty strange experience. So. Trying to pare this down. I'll give you a truncated version of it because it's quite long. But essentially, we ended up in the pub. Good start to any ghost story.
You don't say.
So we ended up in the pub, but we didn't have enough money to drink. So we ran out of money halfway through it. So I think he had like €10 on or something like that. So we all got one drink each. So we had one drink. We ended up nursing that, and then another group of guys we were drinking with happened to buy us. So we had 2 drinks that night. So 2 drinks is nothing, no problem. 2 beers.
Lucky bastard.
So I was like, okay. So I think a fight kicked off in the pub actually. So we decided to make a run for it because the fight that kicked off was with this group of guys we were drinking with, and we were hoping the locals wouldn't assume we were with them as well. So we ran off. Anyway, we didn't run, we just left. But we were walking back, and there's a beach just beside, well, not beside, there's a beach near the campsite where we were staying. It's a small kind of a beach. It's nothing too interesting about it. We went down to the beach anyway, and there was a group of people on the beach. And they somehow seemed to know us. I don't know how they knew us. I didn't meet anybody there. I wasn't talking to anybody. So they knew, oh, there's Luke, and there's beep, and there's beep. We had our instruments with us. So one of the guys had a guitar, I had a baron, and the baron is a traditional Irish drum, and I had a whistle. I played a whistle.
Yeah, I was about to ask what that was. I was like,
what the fuck is a baron? Yeah, I had this traditional drum. And so we were walking down, and they asked us to play some songs. And so they were young. So I'm going to say they were young. There was a couple of them. There was a girl, there was a guy, there was a couple of guys, and there was one bloke. And one bloke was having a bit of a rough time. I don't know if he had taken some dodgy pills or something like that, but he was having a bad time. He was growling into the fire and stuff like that. There was a little fire that was being lit.
what?
Yeah, he was having a bad time. But anyway, ended up playing away, having a great crack with these people. Don't know who the fuck they were. Anyway, and time went on. I think we were probably there an hour and a half, maybe 2. I don't even know. Hard to tell. But they needed to get this guy offside. This guy was was starting to freak out. I think he was tweaking or some shit like that. I don't know what was going on, but he was having a bad time. He was trying to run. He was talking about running into the sea at one point.
His name was Sebastian. That's why.
But if he had to run into the sea, he would have died. This is in the Atlantic Ocean. It's rough and it's freezing cold. So anyway, they got him. They left, and so me and my friends were sitting on the beach and got talking, and no more drink was imbibed. This is about an hour and a half later. We had just been playing music and talking to these people for the past hour and a half, bearing in mind. And I was like, "What? Do you remember what they looked like?" And you're like, "No." It's like, "Do you know who they were?" "No." Were they not staying in the campsite with us? It's like, "No." Like, okay. Well, and then I was like, what did they look like? And they were like, they couldn't remember what they looked like. Nobody could remember their faces.
What?
What were we talking about? I don't fucking know. Nobody could remember what we were talking about. Nobody remember what we said. Only that it was nice and it was pleasant. We were playing music for them, and we couldn't remember their faces, couldn't remember anything about them, and they were gone. Didn't know where they went. They just disappeared. The only thing we remembered was the one guy that they had with them, the dude who was freaking out, and he was growling and he was shaking, and he seemed like he had taken something, but he didn't know. And I was thinking, I remember I was studying folklore later on, and I know that the fairies need a human to do anything in this world, and I have a feeling they probably caught someone.
That was him?
Young student who was walking back to the campsite, probably half pissed. They dragged him down, and they need a human to root themselves in this world. And I reckon that's what they were doing down there, and we just happened to walk down onto the beach. They were like, there's music, grand, play away. We don't remember anything about it.
Dude.
That's such a weird experience. It was so weird. Now, you ask those two other guys, and one of them will say, yeah, you're probably right, that was probably fairies, and the other guy will say, no, we were just drunk. But we weren't that drunk. We had 2 drinks. I don't get drunk off 2 drinks. Come on.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand. He does not get drunk off 2 drinks. I think we started at 12, and then we went from there. Just, dude, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was strange. Now, it wasn't a bad experience, but it was a strange experience.
Yeah.
Now, that could have been, but we couldn't remember. Like, at the time, like, I don't really remember what they looked like. I can't put a face on any of them. Just, wow. It was very strange. It was very strange. So there, that's my. I was like, that was fairies, no doubt about it. Yeah. Oh man, dude,
that's got me just like creeping out, because I've been in situations where I was like, hey, I don't remember anything about these people. What?
Yeah, you wonder. Like, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a bad experience, but it's just strange. So, you know, you could lay it down to like just a shit memory or something like that. I don't know, but you know.
Well,
Just
we'll put it on that one. Guys, we're going to take one last break. We'll be back with one amazing story. I think we're going a little bit of history on this last one. This is my GhostCast. Our guest, Luc from Ireland, the stuntman. And right here's where I'll be playing the music. Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to my GhostCast. Our guest, Luc, stuntman and student of Irish folklore. Luc, you got some interesting news for us today on
yeah. Well, I was just gonna maybe kind of briefly talk about the history of Halloween in Ireland and kind of its origins here, and certainly it would have been in the ancient world, probably across maybe most of the Celtic worlds. That would include, you know, modern day France, Britain, and probably Spain as well, parts of Germany, northern Italy. But Halloween, as we know it, comes from a tradition in Ireland, and it was celebrated in Scotland as well, called Samhain. So our Wiccan and Druid friends would probably be aware of Samhain, and it's spelled Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. And it was one of the calendar festivals, the quarterly calendar festivals. It marked the beginning of the dark side of the coming into winter. So Samhain comes from an old Proto-Indo-European word, Sau, means summer, and then summer's end. So summer's end. And in Ireland, it was a liminal time period. So any of these 4 quarters of the year, the 4 seasons, the period between each season is a liminal period, which means it's neither one nor the other. It's kind of this in-between state. And so any place or time that's liminal is closest to the other world, where the gods or the spirits, or the world that the dead are. And so particularly at Halloween in Samhain and October 31st and May the 1st, those 2 dates are associated with the other world highly. And particularly in October the 31st, because it's associated with death. Back in a time, before the modern era, people would have been very well acquainted with death, and very viscerally hand-on. I mean, when someone in our family dies now, they generally are taken to the hospital and it's all dealt with, but back then it was quite visceral. And so where it comes from originally was it was a meat harvest. So the term bonfire, they light the bonfires every night. That comes from bone fire. They used to burn the bones in the fire, and of the slain cattle that wouldn't survive the winter. Now, associated with this is then the dead. So, because it's a liminal time, it's easier to contact that part of the world, that part of experience. And so the idea was that the dead could come back on these dates, or they were easier to contact on this date. So there was a certain amount of trepidation about this time. It wasn't a time that people would really want to go out. It was more a time people needed to stay in. And so they built this kind of sacred fire.
Oh, that's interesting.
And yeah, they built a sacred fire in pre-Christian times, and to kind of well, there's probably a couple of reasons for it, but one of them was that it was a protective fire. And so the idea of guising, where you would dress up like a spirit or a demon or a ghost, was to maybe blend in with the ones that were around, and so turning them away. But the idea of guising and masking is huge in any kind of liminal festival. It's quite common all over the world. But that was the idea in Ireland. And so bands of people would go from door to door dressed as these monsters and ghosts. And what they would do it was called souling. What they would do was they would say prayers for the dead of the family in return for food. And so that's where the trick-or-treating tradition comes from. When the Irish went over to America during the famine in the 1840s, they brought with them that tradition, and that over time became trick-or-treating, because it was also a time of mischief. And so the normal rules of society were gone in this liminal period, so people would go crazy, and it was a big time for pranking. People would steal gates off farmers' doors and run off and leave them a mile down the road, or they would try to scare the shit out of them by screaming into their letterbox at night and banging windows or whatever. But
was it kind of like The Purge?
It could have been. It was like Ireland back in the 1800s and before was it was like the Wild West. So you would have had a lot of crazy stuff go on. But yeah. So with this association with the dead, and also divination, so telling the future, fortune telling was huge at that time. So that's where we get the Halloween games like bobbing for apples and things like that, and nuts.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, pre-Christian times as well, it was a time of sacrifice. So we have to kind of be careful about the sources that were written in the Christian era, because there was a bit of a slant against the pagan tradition. But the god that was supposed to have been prayed to mainly was this god called Crom Cruach. Crom Cruach was like a dark, bent harvest god. And people used to sacrifice children to him, and so the annals say, on this plain my Schlecht, which means the plain of slaughter. So every year they would sacrifice children to this god, this dark harvest god of the earth. And so you ever hear, Crom from...
I was about to say that. I was about to say that for Conan. He's all Crom.
So Robert E. Howard was a big fan of Irish mythology, so he drew that out of it. So yeah,
dude, I'm like, took it right out of my mind. I was like, no way. I was like, oh, this is getting badass.
Yeah, so Crom was a god of the earth. He was an earth god, a god of the harvest, but he was quite dark. It means dark, bent one. He was crooked from carrying a big sheaf of wheat on his back, and he was. Yeah, so there's loads of traditions about St. Patrick going to battle with him and all this kind of stuff. But so he people used to pay homage to him. So by slaughtering, that was the thing. Now they also slaughtered cattle to him too. So
earlier, real quick, Luke, did you say it was a meat festival or meat
harvest? So meat harvest. So our Irish people back then were a pastoral people. So they had a lot of cows. So if you look at Halloween or that period of time, it doesn't really matter too much about, if you're an agrarian culture, like if you're a farmer, that time your harvesting is already done. Whereas at this time for a meat harvest, it's very, very important. So this is the time of the year you'd bring all your cattle you'd have them pasturing up in the headlands, and you'd bring them down towards your home, into the homestead, or near the homesteads, into the lower fields during the winter, because it's too cold up there for them to survive. But the older ones that won't survive the winter, they kill. And so they harvest all that meat, and so they would have a feast, obviously, because you're coming into the winter. Shit's going to get real. A lot of people are going to die, and probably it's not going to be a rough time. So they would harvest the meat, and they would try preserve it in salt and things like that, to survive the winter. But people always mark those times with these big parties, so we can, we'll be okay. We'll live. Hopefully, we'll see what happens.
That's awesome.
So then there's traditions of these because it's so close to the other world as well. There was a worry that the dead that you had wronged when they were alive would come back to revenge themselves on you, or the dead that you were good to, your family maybe, would come back and bless you. And so you would leave food out for them, and also you would carve, well, not pumpkins in Ireland, we carve turnips. Turnip ghosts, but carving a turnip is a fucking bastard. I can tell you that for nothing. So it's easy. We carve pumpkins now because they're just easier. But you can carve it. We used to carve turnips.
Holy crap! Yeah. And
they would use these and put these kind of like gargoyles. You'd put them at your front door with a candle inside them to scare away bad luck and evil. So yeah. So that's a brief, truncated version of the traditions of Halloween.
I think you were also telling me that there's a possibly connection with the Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah, especially in America. So what happened was, when America now is a mishmash of many cultures, and so a lot of the stuff that happens on Dia de los Muertos is quite similar to what happens in. I think possibly. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I had heard that tradition used to originally be celebrated at the start of summer, not at the time that it is in November the 2nd. And I think the reason for that is when the Christianization happened in Mexico, when the Spanish went in, like what happened in Ireland, a lot of the pre-Christian holidays were moved around to fit more into the Christian calendar. And the Christian calendar, All Saints and All Souls Day, happens on November 1st and 2nd. And so Dia de los Muertos, from what I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize.
Don't worry, they'll probably get mad at me. I don't give a shit.
From what I heard, it moved from the start of the summer to the time of the 1st of November, to be celebrated at that point. But when the Irish as well came to America, the tradition of Halloween was more associated with All Saints and All Souls Day too.
Interesting.
So I think there was probably a mishmash there. Now, the traditions are different, but there's still two festivals of the dead coinciding. But I think it was two festivals of the dead that, because they shared a Christian, that they become Christian, I suppose, with time. A lot of the traditions are mixing. So right now in Ireland, on Halloween, you'll find sugar skulls all over the fucking place.
Sugar skulls?
Those funny sugar skulls, the Day of the Dead skulls that you'll see around the place.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I see them, the people. So they've kind of come into our tradition now, which is cool. I think it's
pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of Mexican people in Ireland now. So we have people.
Is there really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. So I'm not gonna feel cool out there. Oh, bastards! They got there before I did.
It'll still be cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have any good restaurants up there? Mexican restaurants?
We have a few nice places. Yeah. We've a few. Dude, we've got a lot of Mexicans here. We've got a lot of Brazilians here too.
Really?
Yeah. We've got tons of Brazilians.
Damn, I had to kick all their asses, man. They better represent well.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good for our genes, to be honest. It's getting a bit stale in here.
I'm all like, hey. No.
Come on over.
No, dude. One day I got to bring you out here, man. And I won't do the same thing as when I was out there in that same trip for Japan. wound up eating at a Mexican restaurant out there. That was what they call in Spanish basura, or garbage. That was like, this is Indian food. That's not Mexican food. But it was so expensive. Mexican food is cheap, man.
Well, I mean, over here, thankfully, there's so many. There's not a lot of them, but there's so many Mexicans over here that they're the ones who are running the restaurants. So we're guaranteed good Mexican food. So
Oh, dude. Oh, man. They wrote it for me. I was hoping to go out there. I can't wait to go.
Come on over, man.
Awesome, guys. Well, we're pretty much, guys, at the end of this particular interview. We'll bring Luc back for plenty more stories, plenty more folklore. This is the first of many. Luc, is there anything advice or anything you'd like to tell my audience or make aware of anything in particular?
Yeah, I suppose if anybody's interested in learning more about the fairy traditions in Ireland, as they were and probably and as they are in certain places, I would recommend reading a book called Meeting the Other Crowd by Eddie Lenihan. Eddie Lenihan is a Shanachie. He's a storyteller, traditional storyteller, but he's been collecting fairy stories since the early 70s. And he is, he's a real authority on these things. And I would say if anybody's interested, so Meeting the Other Crowd, probably get it on Amazon. Yeah, by Eddie Lenihan. Also, another book that if people are interested in the Banshee as well, specifically about the Banshee, it's called The Banshee, Supernatural Death Messenger, and it's by Dr. Patricia Lysett. So Dr. Patricia Lysett did her doctoral thesis on the traditions of the Banshee. It's an academic work, but it's very, very interesting if anybody is thinking that they wanted to learn more about these kind of traditions.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, and I would say so. And I think you can, about Eddie Lenihan, the storyteller, I think he's probably got a page on Facebook you can like, and I think you can get access to some of his podcasts. Some genius has put up a podcast for him where he's telling stories every so often. So I would get stuck into them, because if you want to hear fairy lore and traditional folklore in Ireland as it exists today, he's a real man to talk to.
Well, we like our Luc, so I don't know. We'll see about that. Maybe I'll put the guy's link. Well, we're going to go to our buddy Luc as a trusted source. Been with him in battle, so, can't build any stronger bond than that. Bar battle. That's a battle nonetheless.
Battle. It's all good. I say thanks as well, Trez, for having me on. I really appreciate it, man. And it's great to catch up with you and talk about this kind of stuff, because I love talking about this kind of thing. And my friends, you've drank with them.
Yes.
So I'm too keen on talking about fairies and ghosts. So
we got to bring them on the next show. We put them. Let's see what all four of us would look like on something like that. But no, thanks, man, for coming on. You've always been an interesting guy, and I've known you all these years. I wish we would, we'll probably be more in contact more now than we have in the past. And we'll be the old guys talking about that. Hey, you see that little, we're playing Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen or something.
Nothing wrong with the boss, man. Nothing wrong with the boss.
There you go. Guys, again, Luc, please look him up. Also, anybody need any roles? Yeah, we'll put something up for there,
Anyone need a stuntman?
A stuntman or a stud man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Or just somebody to play and go down drinking with. Guys, thank you so much, Luc. My audience thanks you. I thank you. This is Threz, your host at My GhostCast. It's coming up, and you have a good one. All right, guys. Take care. I hope you enjoyed my interview with my buddy Luc Breathnach. Luc's a badass. One day, though, I'll be broadcasting from Ireland. Thanks again, amigo, for sharing your stories and your culture with us. Guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is Threz with My GhostCast, and so much more to come. Stay tuned.